what I'm going to talk about today is an interesting aspect that we've been thinking about that is called sort of we're calling this field building in Web3. And what the observation is it's something that we started seeing amongst our own team, Blockchain Innovation Hub at RMIT University, which is a multidisciplinary group of social scientists, economists and lawyers and accountants and philosophers and sociologists and ethnographers and that mess. And what we've realized was that the basic question is, what is this thing we're doing? What is this blockchain studies science thing? Like, because we started off going, this feels like economics, and it's clearly economics. But then lawyers were like, no, we were here first. We've been doing law in this space. These are smart contracts. This is about law. And the political scientists were, no, this is absolutely about governance, and so on. And thank you very much. Delivered. All right, what's going to happen is I'm going to go backwards through all the slides. Nope, I'm going to turn them off. All right, there we go. All right, field building in Web3. All right, so what I want to suggest, that the punchline to this talk is, I think we've got a new science that's emerging. The people in this room are building it. This is not a new thing. This happens all the time in science from the very beginnings. But it always feels weird and unusual. And it's never the case that sort of a science, then physics sort of becomes like extra physics and moves on. It's always this weird sort of this thing. And I want to describe what I think is going on. So, sorry, super sensitive. Web3, I think, let me just go over, we also roughly know what Web3 is, in the sense that, I mean, the third generation of the internet, a bunch of new technologies, smart contract technologies, et cetera, et cetera. But the sort of thing that we've been labeled institutional technologies, it's cryptocurrencies, it's smart contracts, it's sort of spilling over all over the place. Clearly a technological revolution, big tick there. Frontiers of computer science and maths, just unambiguously, there's a tech revolution that's just happened, whether or not you enjoy that or not. Our argument is there's also an economic revolution is happening. That economic revolution we've been talking about in the conference in the past few days. Our sort of quick and dirty summary of it is infrastructure. It's a next generation. This technological revolution is driving a revolution in economic infrastructure down into all of the layers and the deep layers of an economy, and that's happening. So probably, maybe, that's the battle we're having right now, is this disruption of economic infrastructure from industrial economy to digital economy. So big topics, that's what we study. What I want to propose today is there's a third revolution occurring. This one's a little bit more speculative and tenuous, and by the end of the next 15 minutes, I hope to have at least persuaded you that there might be something here. I still don't have a name for it. I'll propose some horrible names, and we can argue about that. But what I think is also going on here is a scientific revolution, and I want to talk about what that is. So first of all, let me say what it's not. DeSci, decentralized science, is one of the use cases of blockchain technology, where we take blockchain technologies and we fix all the problems with scientific publishing and data management and IP rights and priorities and certification and just all of the record-keeping administrative, just keeping track of truth in science. Science is horribly broken in this modern age for just reasons that it's gotten so big. It's not fundamentally broken. It's just when we scale it up 1,000 times, it breaks, and it's been broken for quite a while. Peer review in particular, but large data sets, lots of things. Use case, that's not my topic here. What my topic is this idea that that we're going through a period of a scientific revolution. I'll define what I mean by that very soon. But the point I want to start with is this is not a new and weird thing. This happens all the time. It's just most of us haven't been doing it ourselves or have lived through it in recent times. So the ones that some people in this room and some of my own mentors did was they invented new fields called cultural studies and media studies back in the 60s and 70s, which was this sort of hybrid of trying to make sense of popular vernacular culture, created new fields. RMIT, amongst many universities, is sort of one of the leading places in that. Game theory is another one. I'll talk about that in some more detail a few slides on. Biochemistry was a weird sort of thing that emerged when we banged together biology and chemistry in the 1950s because genetics, right? Created a new field. Now it turns out super useful. Management. Management was a field that was built in the 1930s. It was the basis of business schools. That did not exist in the 1920s. It was just the eldest son of whoever was the founder of the firm took over the firm, and that was how firms were run. It turned out we needed professionalism, which means we needed a science, and how do we create that science? So we built it, management. That gave rise to business schools. Business schools gave rise to all of the, well, that's about half of modern universities now. Engineering. Feels like that's been here forever. It hasn't. That was invented in the sort of 1850s out of a bunch of tinkerers in garages and so on. Just a whole lot of practical applied skills that were gathered together and go, how can we systemize this practical, useful knowledge for building steam engines and bridges and other sort of stuff. That eventually led to engineering schools. RMIT is basically half business school, half engineering school. Those are recent breakthroughs. Science itself, natural philosophy. Anyway, so the reason I'm raising this is that this is a contentious point. The robots are convinced that Web3 is not a new science, so we're fighting them. So, but this field building process of creating a new science is mostly about creating the institutions around it that support it and identifying it and giving it a name and figuring out who's involved and pulling it together. So I think that's what we're involved with here. All right, so the motivation for this, in Primavera, whoever is Primavera, I thank you for this metaphor. I think it's brilliant. The problem with blockchain is it's not clear what it is, right? If you look at it one way, it's a sort of law thing. If you look at another way, it's a database. If you look at another way, it's a sort of, depending on how you look at it, it's a different animal. And we've been here before, right? That's a platypus, right? And when platypuses were first discovered, if you look at the front bit of it, it's clearly a duck. If you look at the back of it, it's clearly a beaver. And eventually they decided, and it's not a duck, beaver, fish, goose, it's a platypus. It's a whole new thing, right? We've got the same problem. If we look at it, oh, look, there's firms, DAOs in there, there's markets, there's AMMs. No, but it's a protocol, it's a platform. So depending on how you look at it, you see different parts of the economy. And the answer is it's not a new type of firm or a new type of market, it's a new type of thing. And that new type of thing, my suggestion, we would benefit from not trying to sort of hammer law into it or economics into it, but just build a whole new science to study the new thing. The new it's a platypus. All right. Science. So the theory of scientific revolutions, and I sort of take you back to school for 2 minutes on this. If anyone has ever done philosophy of science, I apologize, this will be well familiar to you, but for those who haven't studied philosophy of science, there are things called scientific revolutions or scientific research programs. This is the organizational, institutional structure that sits around science. How science evolves, how you get from one science to new sciences, so from classical physics to quantum mechanics, or from Aristotelian biology to Darwinian biology, is science goes through this process of you start with a bunch of stuff that is true and everyone believes and no one has any problems with, and you start accumulating anomalies. There's these weird things keep showing up, and you keep hammering them away and ignoring them and rejecting them from publication, but eventually they become so overwhelming that we have to explain these anomalies. In biology, that was fossils. Why are all these weird things appearing on the beach with teeth in them? Don't care, don't mind, ignore. In physics, it was black body radiation, just these weird jumps that the photons were, ignore. Accumulate anomalies, eventually you get scientific revolution, new type of thing. There's a sort of, if you think about that process, right? It's not a magical thing that truth just appears and we get a new thing. It's a social process of the accumulation of anomalies, of people ignoring those things, and then eventually we realize we need to fundamentally rethink our entire way the world works and do that, right? Those anomalies are cryptocurrencies. What on earth is that weird thing? What DAOs? These things that are arising and they're being hammered back into place by going, if we ignore this long enough, eventually it'll go away, or we eventually start trying to understand what these are. So schools of thought, they're right throughout social physical sciences. It's a perfectly normal thing. I think we're in the process of creating a new one, broadly Web3-ish, and I'll elaborate that a bit more. This is what I mean by the anomalies, and I think the part of what we've been discussing the past few days is the set of anomalies. Everyone's got a different sense of what they are, but amongst the economists, They're just everywhere. It's this weird sort of, why would you tokenize, why would you digitally wrap all of the capital goods? That's a weird thing to do, and when you do it, well, what even is that? It doesn't fit into any of the standard things. It's not money, it's not capital. This is the signs that things are breaking, is the existing words and categorizations don't work anymore. That's what an anomaly looks and feels like. And you can either ignore it and go whatever, or you can focus on it and try and build the new way of understanding it. But the most obvious one is money is just starting to become anomalous. We thought we absolutely knew what money was, and now for the last 10 years we've been having this fight in the Web3 space about what is money. It's an anomaly. We need a new framework to understand it. All right. In my own field, economics, this is what I think is going on. We've got industrial economics, industrial economies, and all of the policy frameworks and theories that are built on that. And we know how to understand these things and network effects and multi-sided markets. And then these weird new things have come in. Commons have suddenly started being really important. Peer-to-peer interactions have suddenly started being really important as opposed to sort of generalized things. So we're getting these digital anomalies that's starting to emerge into it, and we've been framing it as we're evolving into this theory of a digital economy. That's what it looks like in my field within economics, but I think the issue is bigger. I think it's actually a much broader thing, that the same thing is happening in law, the same thing is happening in anthropology and sociology and political science. And when you put all that together, the question is, what is that? Is this a new thing? All right, I think it is. Building the new thing. First thing we have to figure out is, what is it that we all agree is happening? Like, what is the new hardcore fundamental scientific principles, or the new sort of set of axioms or beliefs that sit underneath it? I think this is the process that we're at the moment. The purpose of workshops and forums, and the reason to get everyone together is to try and debate these. This is my conjecture about what I think they are. But these are the things that we're starting to see that sort of differentiate this. Everyone in the Web3 governance science thing kind of converges around this set of beliefs, without exceptions. There may be others, but I think this is where we're up to at the moment, is trying to figure that out. I'll talk you through what I think some of those are, because they're a little bit obscure. But this feels like what is new in the world, that you can empirically observe. These are the anomalies that, not weird anomalies, but these are the things that seem to be true of the new order. All right. What I would emphasize, just as you see this, is that there's a sort of techno-optimism, broad sort of theme running through this. But there's also a whole lot of community and governance and institutional design. A group of people get together and do stuff and build infrastructure seems to be the core thing. All right. How I know this is a new type of science is that there's an evolving methodology, and that methodology is heavily empirically driven. We start by just observing and watching projects and trying to figure out what they all have in common. The science word for that is British empiricism. It's just where it's inductivism. You just watch stuff, you learn stuff, you observe first, theorize later. I think that's kind of what's going on. A lot of the theorizing, the observation is done by just getting involved and doing it. That's sort of what we've learned at Blockchain Innovation Hub, is that the best way to learn about stuff is just to work with the startups doing it. That's a very, very British empiricism sort of thing. The Coasian theory, again, that's some inside baseball terminology, but it basically means interdisciplinary. We're theorizing from whatever is useful. We will use any theory. We don't care. We're not parochial about this. Whatever theory works, we'll bang together, and that'll be the theory we will use, which makes it naturally an interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary sort of approach. And there's a few other sort of things that are centered to that. We've had this before, and the last time, I think the model for this is game theory. Right? What is game theory? This weird thing that a few sort of crazy mathematician geniuses cooked up in the 1930s and 50s. It doesn't fit neatly anywhere. It's biology, you use it in biology, you use it in economics, you use it in political science, you use it in nuclear disarmament strategy. It's this weird sort of intellectual framework that broadly overall explains strategic interaction. It's the science of strategy. I think we've got the same thing going on in what we are doing, but not strategy, it's governance. I think institutional governance, I think, is the unifying sort of science that we've got. So I'll have that sort of thought with you. Apologies that this is a little bit RMIT Blockchain Innovation Hub centric. I made the slides, so I get to do that. But no offense, the point is there's a bunch of different stuff that's coming together from a bunch of different research units around the world. Like it's not just a random everyone. There's a few key places around the world that are doing this. That's exactly what happened with game theory and engineering as well, and other sort of things. A few key places around, a few key sort of research institutes around the world sort of started talking the same way and converging upon the same thing. So I think there is starting to become an emerging canon on this. And what's interesting is it's not just the research academics. This is also coming from industry and from associations and so on. All right, wind up. All right, so what is this? I think these are the 6 main aspects of it. It's kind of coming from everywhere. And Chris has used the phrase born global. I think that's absolutely right about what this is. It's born interdisciplinary. It didn't start naturally in one field and migrate. It started in all of a bunch of fields and is converging. It's born multi-method. There's no clear way in which you do this, but it's empirical first and theoretical second. It's naturally systems theory and evolutionary theory and complex systems theory and ecological theory. Like there's a complex evolving systems aspect that every time you see it, you see that. So that feels like the theoretical sort of source of it. The other thing is it's naturally disruptive, as were all the previous scientific revolutions. They were disruptive. They were, and I think the core disruption here is hopeful. It's a build a better world type, or fix a lot of the problems type sort of thing. So this feels like a very practical, applied, global interdisciplinary multi-method science. All right. Finally. I don't know what to call it. I was hoping I'd have a name by today, but I've got the closest sentence I can come to of what it is it's automated common knowledge, which might not seem the most obvious thing to say out loud, but it's common knowledge in the sense that that's what a ledger is. It's enabling common knowledge to work. If everyone, or intersubjective knowledge, if you want to get super specific. It's if everyone can look at the same thing and know that something is true and act on that truth, and we can build a common knowledge or a ledger, and then automate that. It's the governance of that thing, right? That's what I think the science is, and all of its uses, right? Whatever it will be used for. But it feels like that's it. I couldn't make a scienceology a word out of all of that. So I'll leave that as a sort of a prize, as a challenge for those. But I think that's what this is. So with that, that was sort of what I wanted to sort of do. I think, what is this? It's a new thing in the world. We've got a new science that's emerging. It doesn't have a name yet. It feels a little bit like a design science, but what it's trying to do, the purpose of this new science, this new thing, is to help us design future economies, societies, and all of the components of that, the legal components, the political components, the governance components, and so on, which is why governance sort of is so central to this. So with that, that was all I had to say. It's a provocation. This is what I think we are doing. Clearly this is incomplete, and we're just at the beginning of that. But I think this is the reason for us to amplify the work we're doing together, and not to sort of move off into the corner. So, thank you very much.